Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar entitled Minimize Security Vulnerabilities in a Range of IoT Devices. This webinar was organized in the scope of the MSEC project, a new Japan collaborative project that stands for Multi-Layered Security Technologies for Hyper-Connected Smart Cities. But before we start, just some technical recommendations. So please make sure that you have your microphone and your video turned off. We ask you to also rename yourself, like you see in the top right corner picture, to first, last name, and the entity you represent, making it easier for us to identify you during Q&A. We ask you to use the raise hand button, like you see in the bottom right picture, if you have a question. There will be a specific slot dedicated to Q&A at the end of this presentation, so I will go through the raised hands and ask you to speak. So a brief overview of our agenda for this webinar. So I will start with a brief presentation of what the MSEC project is and what are we aiming for. Then our speakers will discuss the relevance of the IoT layer in a modern smart city and how you can securize it in terms of data security and privacy. They will also present some conclusions regarding the research results they have already achieved in the scope of the MSEC project, namely the challenges they had to deal with and how to mitigate them. And finally, we want to have your feedback on what was presented, if you are facing or have faced similar challenges, and we want your contribution to this discussion on how we can make our cities more data secure. But before we start, we want to get to know you a little bit more and what are your expectations for this webinar. So I ask you to please answer 3 polls that I'm going to launch. Your answers will be anonymous and it's just for us to get to know you a little bit more. So the first one, it's launched. So it's about the entity you represent. So, and you can start answering any moment from now. So are you from the public, which includes industry and SMEs, from the research community, from a regulation body, or from the smart cities community, let's say citizens or startups more related with smart cities, IoT, our normal citizens just interested in this topic, or from the policy-making world? Okay, only half of you answered. Does anyone want to, okay, continue to participate? Okay, waiting a few more seconds. Okay, so I will now close this pool and I will show you the results. So here you have it. So 60% of you are from what we consider general public, although the majority of you might come from the industry or from an SME. Also a few people from our research community, and others from our community, so city field trial stakeholders, citizens, or startups engaged in smart cities or IoT. Now I would like to launch a second pool. So this one here is about your main interest in this webinar. And here you can choose more than one option. So are you here because you want to know a little bit more about the MSEC solution, in particular, what our researchers are doing? Do you want to get in touch with them to exchange some feedback with them, to tell you about your research, your own research? Do you want to know more about the IoT layer of this specific MSEC solution? A lot of answers popping up, which is great. Okay, a few more people left to answer. So I will give you a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can close this poll for now, and I will share the results with you. So I believe that you are eager to learn about the MSEC as a whole, but in particular about what our researchers are doing in terms of the solution that we will provide in the scope of this project. But a lot of you also want to know about the IoT layer of the MSEC solution, and I believe that this is why you have joined us today for this webinar. But some of you also want to get in touch with our researchers, which is great, perhaps to continue further discussions on this topic. And finally, our last pool, our third and last pool. So it's about your previous knowledge of the MSEC project, just to know if you have already heard about this collaborative project, if you haven't heard at all, and this is the first time that you will get in touch with our project. We'll give you a few more seconds so that you can all answer. Okay, I will close the pool now. And here you have it. So the majority of you seems to already be acquainted with MSEC, which is great. So you already know a little bit about what we are going to discuss today. For those of you who don't know MSEC, so this is the perfect opportunity to get in touch with us and our researchers. And if you want to know more than what will be discussed in this webinar, please don't hesitate in contacting me, and I will provide you gladly more additional information. Okay, so thank you for participating in this Let's Break the Ice pool. So we continue with our presentation. So what is the MSEC project and what are we aiming for? So the MSEC project, like I told you before, is an EU-Japan collaborative project that brings together strong partners from both sides, so from the industry and from the academia, but also others such as smart cities. And in this case, we have two, the smart city of Santander in Spain and the smart city of Fujisawa in Japan. These partners have been chosen for their knowledge on data security and also on smart city platform. So the main goal of the MSEC project is to research, develop, deploy, and demonstrate how multi-layered security technologies can ensure secure, hyper-connected smart cities. Ultimately, MSEC researchers are trying to develop a new market solution that leverages all the layers that you see here in this picture, so cloud, IoT, big data, blockchain, and end-to-end security, as well as on the device level. So a market solution that leverages all these layers upon which smart city applications can be built, and information can be securely exchanged between all the stakeholders that are in a smart city. And this is why, in the end, one of the goals of the MSEC is to create a marketplace for IoT data, where IoT data can be exchanged and monetized, ensuring anonymity, reliability, and trustworthiness of the available resources. And this marketplace will be available next year. So the MSEC solution, or the MSEC architecture, like we call it, will be piloted in 2 smart cities that I have previously referred. So Santander in Spain and Fujisawa in Japan. But we also welcome other cities who also want to replicate this solution. So if you are a city, you are interested in knowing more about MSEC, please don't hesitate in contacting us to see how you can replicate what we are doing in this project in your own city. But how will our researchers test the MSEC solution? So that is the question. By applying it into 5 different use cases, like we call it. So these use cases relate to diverse areas of a smart city life. So they go from trying to improve the well-being of growing elderly population to monitoring rubbish collection, which is a use case that will be presented today, to create playable city games, such as applications for touristic attractions in your own city. So all these areas in our lives, they use data and they use IoT applications. And our MSEC researchers believe that MSEC solution can in fact improve data exchange security and privacy in all of them, in comparison with other solutions that are already available in the market. So moving to what actually brings you all here, I would like to give a warm welcome to our 3 speakers that are here with us today. And will tell us a little bit more about the research that they have been doing for the past 2 years in a specific layer of the MSEC solution, which is the IoT layer. So welcome Aamir Bokhari from YNU University, Arturo Medela from TST in Spain, and also Akira Tsuge from Keio University. So I will now pass the floor to Akira. So Akira, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Nadine. Hello, everyone. My name is Akira Tsuge from Keio University, Japan. I'm especially working at IoT platform and wireless sensor network for various IoT application service area. As Nadine explained, that the one of big challenge of MSEC project is deployment of secure smart city platform reality. First of all, I'd like to explain how secure IoT platform is important as a background. Next, please. As everyone knows, various pilot or trial are being made around all over the world for smart cities. But the current situation is that horizontal deployment of data solutions between cities has not yet been completed. This slide shows a little bit old data in 2016. It was reported that there are more than 360 IoT platforms globally and more than 60 platforms related to smart cities. Now we are in 2020, but even as of 2020, I don't think this situation has changed much. There is no de facto standard for smart city platforms. Comparing with PC smartphones platforms such as iOS or Windows. How to share the data and solutions between cities around the world in this situation is one of big challenge. Next, please. Okay. Sorry. On the other hand, as is a case in the world of PCs and smartphones, the more common and widely used platforms are, the more essential measures against security attacks become essential. That is, standardization and security generally conflict with each other. So we are challenging to establish actual secure smart city platform in this MSEC project. I think this is not only for today's IoT layer security, but this is actually one of most important answer of what is the MSEC project. Okay, so I'd like to hand over to the next speaker. Next, please.
Hi, everyone.
Arturo, please.
Thank you so much, Akira. Hi, everyone. This is Arturo Medela speaking. And first of all, I would like to say hello to everyone and thank you for attending this webinar. As Akira said, Arturo Medela, and I'm currently working in the R&D department in TST, Spanish SME, deeply involved in the Internet of Things world, which since a few years back can be considered as a hot topic, let's say, due to its role in the smart cities. And why is that? Well, first of all, let's say that it's a fact that people continue to flock to cities for several reasons, such as employment opportunities, liking better this kind of lifestyle, and so on. As this migration movement continues, those cities will need to become more efficient in order to keep up with all the charging population. Therefore, the smart cities concept arises, and they all will start to become the norm in the major metropolitan areas in the world. It's being a fact, I would say. The two cities involved in this project, Fujisawa and Santander, are aiming to achieving this goal of being considered as smart cities. And that's why they are taking opportunities in this context and making movements in order to really achieve this. So all these smart cities make use of the Internet of Things and the kind of devices that feed them, such as connected sensors, even lighting and meters of different purpose to collect and analyze data flowing throughout the smart city. Then those cities use this data to improve infrastructure, the public utilities and services, and much more. Next, please, Nadine. Thank you. So talking about this data usage in the smart city, well, let's say that smart cities leverage all the technology solutions that technology is providing to improve their city services, including, but not also, as we said earlier, the utilities, the transportation network, and the public services. And also, and this is paramount, the living experience of the residents. They must be the focal point of all these initiatives. That's why municipalities make use of IoT sensors, networks, and applications to gather relevant data, such as traffic congestion, energy usage, air quality, and so on. And then take advantage of all these huge data sets of information generated by IoT devices scattered throughout the city to analyze and process them, and in the end, being able of implementing proper smart city services. As Akira stated, we are relying as well in big data platforms which in the end should be a relevant part of the ICT infrastructure in every city. And they would be in charge of sorting, analyzing, and processing all this data gathered from the IoT deployments. That's why in the end, we could get useful and novel services, optimizing such activities like as the waste management, the public transportation, or even the city lighting when it's switching on, switching off, and so on. So Nadim, if you could continue, please. Reaching this point, we want to state that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, this is the CIA concept of the IoT data that we are using to propel the services, is really important for improving not only the infrastructure, but also the citizen lives. So next, please. And I pass the ball again to Akira.
Okay, thank you, Arturo. Okay, I'd like to explain by using actual IoT platform example. This slide shows Keio University's mobile sensing platform as an actual working smart city platform in Fujisawa City in Japan. But I think these basic features are almost same as other solutions. From the left-hand side, number one, collecting data, and number two, delivering data, and finally, number three, analyzing data. Generally, for example, number one, collecting data part consists of physical IoT sensor device or some edge device and wireless system for transmit sensor data, and so on. And number two, delivering data part is mainly consists of a cloud layer. And number three, analyzing data part is mainly application layer, including smartphone devices. Within this, next please. Sorry. Yes, thank you. Within this IoT platform, IoT layer security is needed, especially this red circle area. Okay, so next please. Okay, I'd like to hand on to the Aamir.
Yes, thank you, Akira-san. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know that there are a lot of global participants on this webinar as well. So welcome to this webinar. My colleagues, they have explained the importance of IoT and the usage of IoT in smart cities. Since we need to collect the data, we need to collect the information. So the trust, the integrity of the information is one of the key things that we need to focus on and make sure that that data is reliable and trustworthy. And the basic way to protect a data is through security. And I will talk a little bit more detail on how and from what angles do we look at security and what kind of approaches in this MSEC project we have adopted in order to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of this data, which is the key basis of decisions making or providing convenience or living in a smart city. Next slide, please. So in security, let's start with a very basic example. When we want to secure something, we want to make sure that that thing is protected from different angles. And one way and very common way of analyzing that is to look at what kind of threats exist, who can steal it, or how they can steal it. So since I have been working on IoT security for the past 2 years, and I have extensive background in IT and telecom with a focus on information security. So based on our experiences, and we do analyze different forms of attacks. We try to understand how the bad guys try to steal information, and then we apply that in knowledge and information and share it with our colleagues all over the world. So that's where the threat intelligence comes from. So we do our own intelligence, as well as we also share the ways these compromises or vulnerabilities can be exploited with other threat sharing entities as well. So from IoT point of view, when we look at the threats, we can kind of summarize them into some of basic groups. It's very extensive list, but we are looking at some common areas which are often exploited, and they require a special attention from security point of view. For example, interfaces. Any time when a device is interacting, it needs to send the data. It needs to send the information to different areas over the internet, over the cloud, over the web, either through mobile. So the interfaces are very common. And you can think of interfaces just like a door in a house, which is subjected to knocks or for stealing purposes or for entry points. Enumeration attacks, cross-site scripting, SQL injections, these are very common attacks that often happen in order to compromise the security of a device. Same is the case with authentication and authorization. Obviously, you don't want any person to enter your house if you don't know that person. So this is why passwords or different levels of security are assigned. So very often in IoT networks, we have seen that default passwords are often compromised. Privilege escalation attacks often happen. So authentication authorization is also one of the area that poses a major threat to IoT device. Same is the case with network services. So you have services that are being offered for clients, and those services are often compromised through denial of service attacks and other attacks that bad guys are using. So we basically need to cover that angle as well. Data security, data is our crown jewel. That is what we are here to protect. So we want to make sure that data is protected in rest as well as in motion. So we want to make sure we look at what are the means to protect the data, and those means are not easy to break. Same is the case with security configurable features. We have often seen that since IoT has bloomed so much in such a short time, that in order to get to the market, most of the time manufacturers, they just get the features done or get the application done and roll it out. But because of that, they don't have many security features enabled. And this is where the weak point comes in, and the bad guys knows that, and they try to exploit these in order to get into the IoT devices. Firmware, software, the key brain in an IoT. So we want to make sure that nobody should be able to jeopardize the availability of the IoT devices. Same is the case, physical security. IoT devices are really small, easy to carry, portable. So we want to make sure that they are physically secured as well. And last but not least, the privacy. Personal identifiable information is one of the most hot selling item in the black market and the dark web. So we want to make sure that the PII is also taken care of, if any, coming through these IoT devices. Next slide, please. So those threats, how do we measure the threats, or how do we look at what kind of areas or what kind of challenges we have? So we can actually summarize that based on the trends we have seen, and also through other research communities that have actually provided. And Gartner, for example, estimates 25 billion of IoT devices will be connected to internet by next year, 2021. That's a huge market, which is also very, very lucrative and very, easy to target by the bad guys. One of the key things we have seen is that plug and play concept is there because these devices, IoT devices, are user friendly, and in order to make them user friendly, usually users are not so techy, so they don't to spend too much time on managing or configuring the devices. They just want to plug and play with those devices. So that create another opportunity, another risk for us to cover. Resources are also small because these are very portable small devices, so we can't actually protect them in the same way as we protect enterprise wide networks or large enterprises or small to medium businesses. So we need to make sure that whatever security solutions we put in place, it should not reduce the functionality or the efficiency of the IoT device. Another trend that is popping up is automation of the tools. So now the automation, even the bad guys are using these automations. One example is the malware attack in 2016 by a malware called Mirai botnet. This was one of the first biggest compromises that happened. And what they did was they targeted one company in North America that was providing online services, domain name services for Twitter, Netflix, CNN, Spotify. And they basically they infected millions of IoT devices with their malware. And that malware basically then was programmed to send a legitimate packet, not a something that the normal DOS attacks are there, but a legitimate packet to the DNS servers at the same time. So imagine that you are getting legitimate requests all at the same time from millions of IoT devices. So this was one of the eye-opening where the importance of IoT was mentioned and was actually seen in real life. Next slide, please. So based on the threats and risks, when we took this challenge on securing the smart cities, we wanted to make sure that we should be able to protect the data. And when it comes to data, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data is the most important aspect. So we wanted to make sure that whatever we do, we should be able to minimize the risk and make sure that the vulnerabilities and any kind of usability of these IoT devices is not compromised, and the vulnerabilities are mitigated in a way that we should be able to not only protect the data, but the privacy of the data as well. So we did a thorough risk assessments and the threat assessments on all the IoT devices. We looked at all the input and output, or the ports, or the interfaces, or where the data would be traveling. And we wanted to make sure that we should be able to protect it all the way, either using a software-based solution or a hardware-based solution. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the software-based approach, and then I will ask my colleagues to talk about the hardware-based approach and the privacy approach. The software-based approach is very simple. Basically, we wanted to make sure that we should be able to cover all the millions of IoT devices that are already in the field, or the kits are available easily to deploy, or for new ventures to basically exploit. So we wanted to make sure that it is readily available using open source licensing. Also, since the resources is one of the constraints, so we wanted to make sure that whatever this software-based approach we implement, it should be lightweight so that it can be implemented on these IoT devices easily. And then again, since IoT market is such a huge market, and there are various use of IoT devices, so we wanted to make sure that these approaches are also customizable and can be easily tailored according to whatever the design or the intent of the IoT device is. Now, in order to do that, we need to make sure that we should be able to cover the external and internal security layers and the data security as well. And for not a single point of failure, we wanted to put in multiple layers of security as well without jeopardizing the resources available. So the whole idea of IoT or using a software, it was to extend the solution to as many people as possible, to give the guidelines, to give the ideas of how we can use it using a software-based approach, and then let the stakeholders look at, and based on whatever their requirements are, they can either choose a software-based approach or a hardware-based approach, or they can combine both. So that's I have, and I'll pass the next slide to Arturo.
Many thanks, Amir, for introducing the software-based approach. Now I will start talking about the hardware-based approach, as Amir suggested, and then afterwards Akira will also provide another layer of information related to this hardware-based approach. In order to start, I will do so talking about introducing you the IoT devices that will be used in one of our MSEC use cases on the field. In this case, one happening in the city of Santander. As you can see in the two pictures on the left and in the middle, we are developing a couple of different IoT devices, and I will just give a few glimpses about what they do. The one on the left, it's in charge of performing environment monitoring activities, and it's getting environmental measurements from up to 5 different sensors, specifically selected along with the Santander municipality, trying to pay attention to some specific measurements that so far they are not getting, because let's be realistic, this is not so novel, a device getting some environmental measurements. The thing is that in order to, in the end, provide these optimized services to citizens, the municipality detected a couple of measurements that currently are not getting retrieved, and we are providing them. So we are making this, integrating these sensors on top of STM32L4 microprocessor, which in the initial prototypes was scheduled to interact with the TPM device, the one that you see on the right. This piece of hardware, and let me introduce it, it's called the STPM4 Raspberry, one of the various TPMs that ST Microelectronics presents in its portfolio. And its main goal is to let developers to implement a measure boot and thus ensure platform integrity. So what we are doing here in SEC is applying this, making use of both the TPM functions and the platform configuration registers. So going back to these environment monitoring devices, we ran some initial tests, and in the end, we have created the final prototypes switching the microprocessor in the board. So we are using here another flavor of the STM32L4, in this case coming from the CBU6 series, with data encryption capabilities. That gives us the chance, the ability to send from the very own IoT device the data from all the sensors already encrypted. And then it's a labor of the server to decrypt it and present it in a proper way to the corresponding big data platform, or as is the case in this pilot, to a specific web page that will be employed by our registered users. On the other hand, and let's say that we try to be a little bit more modern, and the reality prove us that we were not wrong, and in almost every part of the world it's considered as a must now, is a crowd counting device. This is another IoT device that, in this case, is built on top of a Raspberry Pi and also incorporates this TPM to provide the good security. What we are doing in here is sniffing signals coming from the portable devices of users in the neighborhood in order to get a figure, a quite approximate figure, close to reality, related to how many people is gathering in a specific spot during this time that we are putting the device to work. What we are doing in MSEC is putting one of these devices in one of the most well-known and huge parks in the city of Santander. And the other one, since it's quite portable, will be moving around and being employed in different events that will take, we hope so at least, will take place in the city if all things go well enough to act this way. So what we did in here as well was testing these initial prototypes, implemented the Raspberry and the interaction with the TPM. And after running some checks, we decided to add another extra layer of security in here in our final prototypes, where we have implemented some advanced encryption, let's consider it a software approach, let's say, to prevent undesired external accesses. And now it's turn to give the floor to my colleague Akira that will get you through the hardware-based approach that we are following in other MSEC use cases. Thank you, Akira.
Thank you, Arturo. I'd like to explain IoT security from privacy approach. This slide shows again Keio University's mobile sensing platform example. As you can see in this slide, we have deployed the automatically counting garbage amount solution by using deep learning analysis of video data from garbage truck monitoring camera. We installed edge device, which enables deep learning processing within only this device in this system. So in this example, we don't need to upload video data, which is including many privacy data, to the cloud. We can send just the result from the deep learning analysis data to the cloud. Okay, next please. Okay, I'd like to ask Aamir again to summarize today's IoT Layer webinar.
Thank you, Akira-san. So let's look at how all these things are concluding. And next slide, please. And I will ask Arturo to take care of the next the following slide. But I am going to explain you a overall security picture that covers confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data. So with the help of hardware and software-based security options, we have been able to not only cover the external and internal security elements, but also we created multiple layers of security which are embedded in the software as well as hardware. The options are to focus on providing an option to various IoT hardwares that are already available off the shelf, and how to strengthen their security, as well as if they are lacking some form of security that can be added on with a hardware-based solution. So in all, in order to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data in MSEC, we have been able to reduce the threat surface by hardening the software or the OS, and making sure that anything that is open or is not used will be closed so that we have less number of entry points. Now, similarly, we also took care of the physical layer as well as the logical layer. Special emphasis, as I mentioned in my previous slide, authentication is one of the key things that is often compromised. So in order to also ensure the data integrity and the data confidentiality, we also have both software and hardware-based encryption solutions available. And now these are internal security elements that we can implement, but at the same time, we also implemented external perimeter defenses just to make sure that we can stop the bad guys from basically entering at the from the door. Also, at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we have a monitoring capability built into the solutions that can help us show us the status of the security, or 24/7 monitoring of the happenings, or what's going on the security field. On top of that, the privacy layer, as explained by Akira-san in the previous slide, is also there. So the whole idea is to stop or to eliminate the PII right from the beginning, rather than waiting and processing it later on. So this way, we have been able to reduce the compliance efforts. We have also been able to reduce the danger of PII being hacked or taken en route to the destination server. Next slide, please. So I will ask Arturo to actually cover the mitigating risks and threats in IoT layer. Arturo?
Sure thing, Aamir. Thanks for giving the floor in here. Let's wrap this up talking about how IMSEC consortium is trying to mitigate all these risks and threats that we have detected in the IoT layer of our platform. So as we have hinted earlier in the webinar, as part of the consortium work, an analysis of the risks and threats lingering over MSEC and the overall platform was conducted in the last few months. And in turn, it led, it led to devise and put into effect certain mitigation activities over the IoT layer. Strengthening this IoT layer, providing the needed security and reliability. At this stage, IoT platforms are a common ground, but also exhibit considerable dissimilarities in terms of architecture and concerning as well how the services can be implemented in the model. However, common security criterion can be useful to apply in they all, and specifically in the MSEC platform. The security criteria that we are going to follow can be based on the 5 following topics: the authentication, the encrypted information management, the authorization, accounting, and finally, anomaly detection. The results of the application of the proposed mitigation activities will be provided in future deliverables emanating from the project, and piloting stages of the different MSEC use cases will put to a test all these activities. And this way, it will be possible to demonstrate how all those actions that theoretically could be indicated to mitigate the aforementioned threats to the system present a real effect over real life deployments, as represented by these MSEC use cases. So please check out our results at the end of the project. We hope they are successful enough. So that's all, Danin, we can go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Arturo, and also thank you to Akira and to Aamir for the great explanation. So I think that now it's time for our participants to shine and ask any questions, provide any feedback. So we are eager to know if you have any suggestions, if you are dealing with the same challenges, just raise your hand. And ask your question. Let's wait if someone wants to be the first. Usually the first one is the hard one, the hardest one. If not a question related with the MSEC IoT layer, perhaps sharing your own knowledge regarding.
Can I speak? It's Andy Sylvie. I do apologize. I cannot see how to raise my hand on the.
No problem.
Screen,
so it's no problem, Andy.
I raised
Good
my
morning.
hand. So good morning. So thank you very much. It was a fascinating presentation and very interesting. And I'm just curious if for a minute or two you could just share a little bit about how the edge devices and the IoT endpoints, how they are identified. Because obviously they need an identity, don't they? And I'm just curious on that part.
Sorry, I'm not sure that I get your question
okay.
properly.
So every let's say that there's a rubbish bin in a smart city. There's a rubbish bin, a garbage bin.
Sure.
And there's an IoT device in that bin, which has a sensor to see if the bin is full or empty, and therefore if the truck needs to come and collect the bag from the bin. How are with this solution? How are we identifying the identity of that bin and communicating with it then?
Okay, it's
so it has an IP address, or because there aren't enough IP addresses, are there? So how are we going to identify the bin?
Yeah, we are just doing so through the IMEI of the every SIM card that we are employing for this particular case, at least when talking about the devices in use case one. That was the one that I was presenting in here. And also it can be extended to, as you said, in this example, to the garbage collectors and so on. So what we are doing in here is providing the security through the encryption of data and making the IoT devices, let's say, dummy. They are only sending data and not ever receiving, at least in these particular deployments in our use case. They are not receiving any updates through the air. So that's one way of avoiding external attacks. We know that in other scenarios, it's a must to have this over-the-air programming. And well, that's not the scope of this particular use case, so I will not like to get into the details. But well, I hope this answered your question, at least for this particular pilots that we are going to implement as part of MSEC.
Okay.
Thanks for your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So anyone else with a question, a comment, perhaps also wanting to share their experience? No? Okay, so perhaps a last call for questions before we close Q&A.
I've got another question. It's Andy here. I've got another question.
Hello,
I
Andy,
can't raise my
again.
hand because I cannot see the button to raise my hand. But could we be told a little bit more about that, the technology where you've got the cameras, it's pointing at a garbage bin and the camera is able to identify if the garbage bin is full or empty. And instead of sending the pictures up to the cloud, it's basically sending the result of analysis of the picture. That's what I understood from that slide. And could you tell us a little bit more about how that is working? Because that's really quite fascinating, isn't it? It reduces, as you showed in that slide, it reduces the compliance part of what pictures are you sending to the cloud. It reduces the amount of data you're sending to the cloud. And I'm just curious how that image processing is working at the camera side.
Okay, this is Akira. Nadine, could you back to the slide?
Yes, of course. One moment.
Page, I think 24.
Is it this one? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Thank you for your question. Basically, this is a camera installed to the garbage truck for monitoring. First of this project, we send this video and analyze in cloud application. But as you know, there are many privacy data including here. For example, there are many city staff. So we installed not only camera, but also additionally we installed a small PC for the processing the deep learning on this PC. This is installed to each garbage trucks. And of course, at this moment, it is a little bit expensive, but as you know, there is a good solution like Jetson Nano, which is a very cheap device and enabling the processing like this kind of deep learning process. So we can provide this solution avoiding the not videos data, not sending videos data itself, but we send just result from the deep learning processing.
Yeah, and just to comment on this, you know, when I see this, I think, and as you probably know, there are probably many more opportunities to apply this approach, which you've got here, deep learning, the video and sending the results. For example, the one thing I think of is intrusion detection. So instead of streaming all that data from cameras around people's houses or buildings up to the cloud and the cost of that, the cameras could be with the PC, with the local PC, like you've shown with the deep learning. If somebody comes onto your property, the camera spots it and just sends the event. The event has happened, somebody's on your property, and just sends the event information. And probably there's many more opportunities where the principle that you've got here could be applied. It could be in factories, it could be in production scenarios where instead of having scales, for example, to tell you a box is full, the camera can show you visibly the box is full. And it might be cheaper to have the camera showing you that with the deep learning than having very special scales which have to weigh things and can fail, can't they, and that kind of thing. So this is really fascinating, what you've come up with here.
Okay, thank you. Of course, this is just one example of our approach. So, of course, we are trying to make the more hybrid sensing using the other IoT devices. As you said, for example, there are some sensor for the garbage box is full or not full. there are many IoT sensors, and not only the video analysis. So we are trying to integrate this video processing and physical IoT sensing. And what we can apply the additional new feature. This is our challenge.
Well, I'm just thinking out loud. And for example, the garbage container, I know a little bit about that because I have a friend who's interested in these smart cities and smart dustbins and that kind of thing in the city. And one of the physical operational challenges which I visualize with having a sensor in the garbage can in the city is that garbage cans in their day-to-day operation, they get a lot of abuse, don't they? The truck could drive into them, the man could bang them. And so if you've got sensors and a scale in the can in the garbage can to say it's full or not, that's at risk of easy risk of becoming damaged. But imagine most cities in most countries, it's a fact these days, have got cameras throughout the city. And so what you've done here, you could reutilize the existing camera infrastructure in a city.
Yeah.
So you've got a main street in the center of the city where the camera is watching, he's watching for cars that are parking correctly, he's watching for all different things. Well, with your deep learning technology, when every time the camera pans, maybe the camera is panning or maybe it's focused on one point all the time, but if it has a dustbin or a garbage bin in its line of sight, then you could also reuse the video from cameras which are already in use in the city. And I think that that would be an interesting proposition for the cities because you're reusing existing infrastructure, reusing existing technology. They don't have to spend more money on more cameras or more sensors in the bins. And then you just do your deep learning, don't you?
Yeah, that's a good point. Exactly. And this example is just already installed camera. We are using the already installed camera. And at the same time, we have another approach for bus, public transportation. Bus also have a camera, some cameras already installed in the camera. So we are trying to this video data. We try to analyze how many people getting on the bus, and from this is a little bit we are aware of from the COVID-19 environment. So we are trying to some kind of analysis from the already installed camera data. So thank you for your question and comment. It's very.
I just got another comment. You know, until today, most cities are familiar with having a room in the city, maybe in the police station or somewhere else, where they've got a wall full of video screens and they've got humans watching the screens. And what you've got here, you could replace the humans with the deep learning, couldn't you? And so it could be traffic violations which are being monitored by the deep learning. It could be anything where in the past humans were watching the screens. The deep learning can watch the screen.
Yeah. Yes. As you said, there are many camera and video processing by using deep learning solution. There are many approach. So we'd like to try to apply not only this example, but also we'd like to try to get make the original new additional feature. So as you commented, thank you very much for your comment and question.
Yeah, and I'll say thank you as well. I've learned something this morning, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andy, for your questions and your comments. And now we also have another question from Massimo Bertaccini. Massimo, please go ahead. Are you there, Massimo? I see a raised hand. Massimo, are you there? Perhaps he was trying to raise hand. Are you there, Massimo? Well, if you are there, we are not able to hear you, so perhaps you can ask your question on the chat if something is wrong with your microphone. So after Andy, does anyone else would like to ask questions to our researchers or give us more feedback? Okay, so perhaps I think that we can close Q&A. Nevertheless, if you have all registered for this webinar in our Success registration page, so you will receive a follow-up email which will contain the video recording of this webinar, also this PowerPoint presentation, and some more important links regarding MSEC and the MSEC solution. So if you are interested in following up what our researchers are doing in a specific topic, so you can catch up either in our social media or our newsletter, or just popping up every now and then in our website. You can also contact us through our official email, which is hello@msec.eu, and I will write this down here in our chat. So let me just write it down to all of you. So it's hello@msecproject.eu. So please feel free to contact us if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you just want to present your own research because you think could be of added value for our project, just contact us through this email. Another interesting information perhaps to all of you who are well aware of this topic and are very much engaged in it. So we will be creating an online community on Slack. We will send you all an invitation if you have registered for this webinar. So in this online community, we expect a more comprehensive engagement of all of you with our researchers to provide feedback, to provide suggestions. So you will be sent a link if you want to join us in this online community, and also be engaged in the MSEC project and what we are trying to achieve. And finally, we will just let you know that we will have, so this is the first of a set of webinars that we will have until the end of this year, focused on the MSEC solution, namely on each one of its layers. So this first one was on the IoT layer. The second one will be on the 11th of November, also at 9 a.m. Brussels time, and it will be focused on the middleware layer and also in other use cases that our researchers are piloting this solution. So thank you very much to all of you. I can see that someone is here in the chat. Okay, so Massimo is having some problems with the audio. Yes, you will get a copy of the presentation, Andy. So like I was saying, we will send you a follow-up email still today or beginning of tomorrow. And this will have the video recording, but also the PowerPoint presentation. And also a small survey that I ask you to please fill it down because it relates with the IoT layer and what we are trying to achieve in this particular layer. So we very much appreciate your feedback if you're not able to provide it today because you are still thinking a little bit about the content that was presented. Please do so through our survey. Massimo, if you still want to ask any questions, please use the hello.msec.eu email that I send you through the chat to all of you, and just ask your question whenever you want by email. So thank you all of you for being here with us today, either for those who are in Europe and for those who are watching us from Japan. And thank you to our speakers, Arturo, Akira, and also Aamir. And have a great day, at least if you are in Europe, and have a lovely end of the afternoon if you are in Japan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
Nadine.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Nadine. Bye-bye,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.